Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore two absolutely monumental forces that are actively shaping our modern world. On one hand, we've got the rapidly accelerating algorithmic power of artificial intelligence, and on the other hand, the deeply human-centric global advocacy of Amnesty International. Putting these two massive topics side by side is actually fascinating. It paints a really clear picture of exactly where technology is taking us and who is standing guard over our fundamental rights. We've got a six-part agenda for you today. 1. Decoding artificial intelligence. 2. The generative AI revolution. 3. The ethical tech pivot. 4. Birth of Amnesty International. 5. Evolution and global impact. And 6. Facing controversies and challenges. Let's just jump right in.
Part 1. Decoding artificial intelligence. It's a field that feels like it's dominating literally every headline today. But to truly understand it, we really need to look at the scale of what we're dealing with.
$1.77 trillion. That's trillion with a T. According to Fortune Business Insights, that is what the global market for AI software is projected to reach by the year 2032. That's an astronomical leap from where we are today. This isn't just some niche tech trend we're talking about. It's a fundamental shift in the global economy. It's promising to completely reshape productivity, automation, and decision-making across almost every industry you can think of. Now, a trillion-dollar industry doesn't just appear overnight, right? Its roots actually trace all the way back to the 1950s when Alan Turing first proposed his famous test to measure a computer's intelligence. By 1952, Arthur Samuel had created a program that literally learned to play checkers. Then fast forward through decades of really quiet behind-the-scenes development, and we hit a massive milestone in 2016 when Google's AlphaGo program defeated a human international champion at the incredibly complex board game Go. So what's actually powering all this modern progress? It's machine learning. This is what lets computers move way beyond just executing a list of preset commands. They use interconnected artificial neurons that essentially simulate the human brain. We call these neural networks. These algorithms are trained on massive data sets. They parse the information, they learn the underlying patterns, and then they start making independent decisions or predictions. And sometimes they do it with a flawless precision that totally exceeds human capability. Which brings us to part 2, the generative AI revolution. We are witnessing a complete paradigm shift here. We've moved beyond computers just analyzing data into an era where machines can actually create. Think about it like a massive leap in logic. Traditional AI is fantastic at executing preset tasks, stuff like pattern recognition or predictive data analysis. But generative AI, that is a whole different ballgame. Powered by large language models, or LLMs, generative AI takes user inputs and produces entirely original content. So instead of just looking at existing information, it's synthesizing brand new text, coding software, and even generating artwork from scratch. It's honestly fascinating how this magic happens, especially in visual generators like DALL-E, which use what are called diffusion models. Basically, the AI takes an existing image and learns by intentionally blurring it, applying the laws of diffusion to scramble all the pixels into total static. Then it trains itself by reversing that process, tracing those pixels backward into their original form. Once it masters that reverse engineering, it can take your text prompt and generate a completely original, brand new image right out of thin air. It is a staggering technological achievement. Part 3. The ethical tech pivot. Because, as you can probably guess, with this kind of mind-blowing power comes some serious ethical baggage that we just can't ignore. Despite its absolute brilliance, generative AI struggles with some really severe structural disadvantages. Machines lack emotional intelligence and empathy, which are pretty essential qualities for making critical, sensitive decisions in the real world. There is a huge potential for distributing harmful content or perpetuating unseen algorithmic biases. We're looking at incredibly complex copyright and data privacy issues, too. And perhaps most importantly, an AI doesn't have any inherent morals. It operates strictly on the data it's fed, with zero moral compass of its own. And this critical gap prompts a really vital question. In a world increasingly run by cold, impartial algorithms that can't factor in human emotion or morality, who steps in to protect human dignity? When the systems governing our lives lack empathy, how do we defend the most vulnerable among us? That perfectly tees up part 4. Birth of Amnesty International. Because long before algorithms were making decisions for us, individuals were standing up against oppressive systems. Picture this. It's 1961, and an English lawyer named Peter Benenson is riding the London Underground. He reads a story about two Portuguese students who were sentenced to 7 years in prison for literally just raising their glasses in a toast to liberty. Outraged by the suppression under Portugal's authoritarian regime, Benenson published a front-page article in The Observer titled "The Forgotten Prisoners." He wanted to take the public's sickening sense of impotence and channel it into united, common action. What started out as just a simple one-year campaign called the Appeal for Amnesty 1961 aimed to defend those Benenson called prisoners of conscience. These were people imprisoned solely for their beliefs, their race, or their religion, provided they hadn't advocated violence. The public response to this was so overwhelming that by 1962, the leadership decided to turn this temporary appeal into a permanent global organization.
Part 5, Evolution and Global Impact. Because as their influence grew, their global scope had to grow right along with it. Over the decades, Amnesty's mandate has expanded way beyond just individual prisoners of conscience. In the 1970s, they widened their focus to include fighting against miscarriages of justice and trying to end the practice of torture entirely. They became a leading voice in the campaign to abolish the death penalty. And as we moved into the 2000s, they recognized that governments weren't the only powers to worry about anymore, so they shifted a lot of focus onto the immense influence of multinational corporations in the age of globalization. Their relentless defense of human dignity gained global recognition incredibly fast. They were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1977. By the 1980s, they were rallying millions of new supporters through massive, globe-spanning rock concerts, like the Human Rights Now tour, featuring the biggest musicians in the world promoting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They exploded from a small London initiative into an organization of over 10 million members and supporters worldwide. Part 6, Facing Controversies and Challenges. Because, let's be real, any organization that spends decades challenging global powers and systemic abuse is inevitably going to face intense scrutiny and some incredibly complex challenges of its own. Amnesty's uncompromising stances have definitely generated immense pushback. Internally, management has had to grapple with highly critical independent reports detailing a toxic workplace culture in 2019, followed by major budgetary crises, and a 2022 report citing issues of systemic racism within the organization. Externally, they routinely find themselves in severe clashes with state powers. For example, their offices in India were raided and accounts frozen over foreign funding regulations. They faced intense pushback for reports criticizing actions by both Israel and Hamas during Gaza conflicts, and they consistently draw fire for investigating the military and security actions of Western powers like the US and the UK. And this is where our two topics totally collide. Amnesty itself has literally had to fight against the weaponization of modern technology. Back in 2019, the organization was forced to petition an Israeli court to revoke the export license of the surveillance tech firm NSO Group. They filed this because they had a very well-founded fear that their own human rights researchers were being actively targeted and surveilled by highly advanced digital spyware. The defenders of human rights suddenly found themselves under attack by the very kinds of technological systems we discussed earlier. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to take away from this explainer today. As machine learning accelerates its grip on our society, our economy, and our legal systems, how are we going to ensure that human rights organizations can even keep up with the algorithms? Will the cold efficiency of AI outpace our human capacity for empathy? Or can we actually harness these immense technological systems to protect and elevate human dignity? It is the defining challenge of our era, and one we absolutely must all keep a very close eye on.